first, let's get into two scientific backgrounds to understand fat and kind of belly fat. So the first thing is to understand why. Okay, so the question is, why is belly fat so hard to get rid of? So the first premise is to understand there are different types of fat cells, right? So there's something called alpha fat cells and there's beta fat cells. Now, beta fat cells can then be further divided into multiple categories. It's actually really complicated. But to just simplify it for all of you, is alpha fat cells are they respond quicker, and they're more quick to have fat lipolysis. So they're more quick to change into energy source and to be used. When you're younger, you obviously have more alpha cells, but everybody has alpha and beta cells. They're just in different concentrations throughout your body, with beta cells being more around your hips and your belly area. So beta cells are typically slower and more resistant to being used. They are called stubborn fat, which I'll refer to that later. They're a very stubborn type of fat, and they are not easy to be used for energy. So the first thing is understanding that, like, alpha cells, and of course, there's always genetic components and all of this type of thing. If you have more alpha cells versus beta cells, you may have an easier time to utilize fat faster. If you have more beta cells, then it's a little bit harder. But beta cells also tend to accumulate more as you age as well, which means that your body is going to hold on to more stubborn fat. And of course, it changes with a lot of things, factors, exercise, nutrition, all the things that I will talk about, right? Hi, Reen, and Let, good to see you. So that's the first thing to understand, okay? The second thing is still on the concept of understanding different types of fat. So there is subcutaneous fat, which I've spoken about, which is fat right under the skin, like the one that you can pinch off of your body. That surface level fat is what is called dormant fat. Okay, so a type of fat that sits around and, it just is dormant. It's kind of like not very active. Whereas belly fat is an active type of fat, which makes this much more complicated, because what do I mean by that? Belly fat is an active type of fat which actively releases hormones that can negatively impact your health. So belly fat and hormones are so intertwined that a lot of scientists often say that, like, your belly is like a separate organ almost, because of it's so affected by so many hormones. And so that's the second thing to understand why belly fat becomes more difficult to lose, right? Hi, Shelly, good to see you. And so this is partially just that foundation. So let's come back to why. So again, the question is, why is belly fat so hard to get rid of? The simple answer is because it's not simply about calories in versus calories out. I had a live that exactly was titled this, calories in versus calories out. It's not eat less and exercise more. It is not a mathematical equation that our brain thinks that it is. So like I shared with you before, my sister, who's a lawyer, was like, wouldn't somebody just lose weight if they just ate less? Like, it's just so logical. And I'm like, no, it's not, it's not this logical equation. So that concept is wrong. So the first thing you guys have to understand is the one thing is that in order to lose belly fat, it is affected by a massive number of hormones, which means it's not a plus and minus equation. Hormones cause multiplication factors, or possible division factors, if you want to call that, or exponential factors, which now you can see from a mathematical equation. It no longer does this plus minus situation that we so simply think about. Because of the effect of hormones, it suddenly multiplies or creates stall outs too, right? So it's not as simple. So that's the first thing to understand. And there's another thing we need to understand before I go into the different types of hormones and kind of helping you guys understand this. So genetically, women are designed to carry more fat I know that we are like, oh, is this fair? It's not fair. Guys start exercising and they can just lose their belly fat much quicker. It's true. They can clean up their eating and they can be at a double rate of loss than a woman, because I've trained a couple couples where the woman would change the food and different things I've coached them on, and like she loses like 8 pounds in like whatever, like a month and a half, and he loses 16 pounds, and she's like, that's just not fair. And I'm like, oh, that's the difference between men and women. But to go to the reasoning behind that is because what is woman's body designed to do? We can do one of the most amazing things, which I'm so respectful of all of you moms and grandmas, is you can grow a human being inside of you, which means you need a lot of resources. So your body is genetically designed to store fat. It's kind of like, it sucks, but it is genetically designed to store fat. And what kind of fat, guys? Stubborn fat. And you're like, no, I don't want to hear this. Well, yeah, that's kind of why, because your body is designed to carry a human being for 9 months and then to breastfeed it on top of that, which uses so much calories and energy. So your body has this natural tendency to hang on to that fat, which is why it is harder for us. It is harder, but I mean, also, I guess we have the privilege to carry a human being that a man can't. And so it is God's design, right? In all of it. So, but it's to understand why. It's a safety mechanism, exactly. Because in the olden times, right, like when we were hunters and gatherers, people didn't have a lot of food. So in order to survive and still carry a baby, the woman has an amazing ability to still not have a lot of food and still be able to produce another human being, which is actually really incredible. So it is a genetic evolution. However, the problem with our society is we have a lot of food now. There's no more scarcity of food or things like that. But we still have that mechanism in our body to hold fat, right? So that's the first thing. And then, of course, to understand that on average, a woman holds 9 to 15% more fat than a man. So we operate differently. This is something I speak a lot about. That's why you cannot follow the same types of advice from guys or diets or different methodology because their bodies function differently. Like, I've seen so many guys who do intermittent fasting and they get shredded. And most women that I have seen do intermittent fasting do not do well with it. And because there's physiological differences. So people who try not to eat and all of this, because we have more genetic coding to hold fat, you exacerbate that signal in a woman's body that a man does not have. This is why I say, like, when you follow gurus, yes, some of these amazing male fitness gurus are amazing. However, you cannot go fully off of what they say because they are not a woman and they do not understand that certain mechanisms do not apply to women. Okay, because I've seen lots of gurus that are guys saying these things and they're saying intermittent fasting works and all of this stuff, but it's like, on a long run, what it can do to your body is actually exacerbate signals of storage, because you are a woman and you have a signal that stores more fat naturally.